The rain had been falling for 40 minutes without stopping. Not the gentle kind, the kind that soaks through your jacket in seconds and blurs your vision and makes the whole world feel like it's closing in. The parking lot outside the gas station on Route 9 was nearly empty, just 2 cars, a flickering fluorescent sign, and the low rumble of a motorcycle engine cooling down near the pumps. Marcus Cole hadn't planned to stop here. He was 3 hours into a solo ride back from his brother's funeral, running on coffee and grief and the kind of silence that only an open road can give a man when he needs to think. He'd pulled in for fuel, nothing else. He didn't want conversation, didn't want eye contact, just wanted gas, maybe a bottle of water, and the road back to wherever emptiness lived. He was screwing the fuel cap back on when he heard her. "Please, please, sir, you have to help me." Her voice cracked on the last word, not the cracking of someone trying to get attention, the cracking of someone who had been holding terror inside their chest for too long and had finally run out of places to put it. Marcus looked up slowly. She was young, maybe early 20s, standing at the edge of the awning's light, soaking wet, one arm wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her own body together. Her eyes were wide and glassy, darting between him and the dark stretch of road behind her. He didn't say anything yet. But something in his chest shifted, because he had heard that particular sound in a voice before, that exact mixture of exhaustion and pure animal fear, and it was not something a man like Marcus Cole could simply ride away from. Not then, not ever. Route 9 was the kind of road that existed in between things, between towns, between choices, between the person you were driving toward and the one you were running from. The gas station sat alone at a fork in the highway, surrounded on 3 sides by dark pine trees that swallowed headlights whole. The nearest town was 14 miles east. On a night like this, it might as well have been on the other side of the earth. Marcus stood at the pump and let the rain hit his shoulders and studied her without making it obvious. Early 20s, dark hair plastered to her face. Her jacket was thin, completely wrong for weather like this, and she had no bag, no phone visible, no car nearby. Her shoes were soaked through. Her breathing was shallow and fast. She hadn't just stepped outside in the rain. She had been running. He glanced without moving his head at the road behind her. No headlights, no movement, just the wall of dark and rain and the occasional flicker of lightning somewhere far above the trees. She's alone, he thought. For now, come under the light, he said quietly. Not a question, not quite an order. Something steady in between. She moved immediately, like she'd been waiting for someone to tell her what to do. He could see her hand shaking. His face gave nothing away, but somewhere behind his eyes, something old and trained and long dormant was already waking up. Because Marcus Cole had spent enough years reading situations for a living to know that a girl who runs doesn't run without a reason, and the reason was still out there in the dark. "Tell me what's happening," he said, slow, from the beginning. She swallowed hard. Her name was Layla. She told him that first, like she wanted him to know she was a real person before she told him the rest. She was 24. She had been driving back from a friend's house in the next county, a birthday dinner, nothing special, when she first noticed the silver car. It appeared in her rearview mirror about 20 minutes outside the city, following at a consistent distance. She hadn't thought much of it at first. Lots of cars use Route 9. But then she turned off onto a side road to take a shortcut she'd used 100 times. The silver car turned too. She got back on the main road. The silver car followed. She pulled into a grocery store parking lot to see what would happen. The silver car parked 3 rows back, and the engine stayed on. That was when the fear started, real, cold, and settling deep into her bones. She had called her roommate, called her mother. Neither picked up. She had tried to call 911, but had panicked when the dispatcher asked for her exact location, and she couldn't remember the name of the road. And in the fumbling, she had dropped her phone out of the car door into a puddle, and now it was dead. So she drove, randomly, desperately, trying to lose him. She ended up here, and the silver car had pulled into the lot behind her. She had seen the headlights swing in as she ran toward the gas station, and she didn't know where it was parked now, but she knew it was here, somewhere in the dark beyond the light. Marcus listened to all of this without interrupting. His expression didn't change, but his eyes moved, slowly, methodically, to the edges of the parking lot, and then something shifted in his face that Layla couldn't quite read. "You said he won't stop," Marcus said. "How long?" "Almost an hour." Her voice dropped. "Maybe longer. I don't know. I lost track." She was shivering now, not entirely from the cold. He unzipped a side pocket on his bike and pulled out a folded emergency thermal blanket. He held it out without explanation. She stared at it for a moment, then took it, wrapped it around her shoulders, and something broke open in her expression. That small, terrible release that happens when someone shows you basic kindness at the exact moment you stopped expecting it. "I don't know who he is," she whispered. "I've never seen him before. I keep thinking, what if I'm just overreacting? What if it's a coincidence?" "An hour of coincidence," Marcus said. She let out a breath. "Yeah." He looked at her carefully. "Are you hurt?" "No. Just." She pressed her hand flat against her sternum. "I can't stop shaking." "Don't talk yourself out of what you're feeling," he said quietly. That was all. She looked up at him then, really looked, for the first time, searching his face for something. He didn't try to reassure her with words or a smile. He just stood there in the rain, solid and still, and waited. She decided. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not just driving away." Marcus didn't answer, because his attention had already moved to something behind her. A flicker of light. Brief. Low to the ground. Near the tree line at the far end of the lot. A car. Parked. Engine off. But someone was inside. "What's his car look like?" Marcus asked, voice completely level. "Silver. A sedan. Older. The front right headlight has a crack in it." Marcus had already seen the car, silver, parked at an angle near the trees, lights off, positioned so that whoever was inside had a clear view of the entire station canopy. But it wasn't the car that made him go still. It was what he could make out of the plate. Partial, rain-blurred. 3 letters and 2 numbers in a sequence that should have meant nothing to a man on a quiet solo ride home from a funeral. Except it didn't mean nothing. Somewhere in the locked room at the back of Marcus's memory, the room he had officially closed 4 years ago when he filed his retirement paperwork, that partial plate dragged something into the light, something from a case file, from a name that had never stopped circling, from a network that had dissolved before anyone could be arrested because someone had burned the operation from the inside. It couldn't be. He told himself that once. His training didn't allow him a second time. "Did you ever get a look at him?" he asked. Layla pulled the blanket tighter. "Once. In the grocery store lot. He got out of the car. He was tall. Older. Maybe late 30s. He had a beard. He just looked at me, then got back in." What was his expression? She was quiet for a moment. "Calm," she said. "That's what scared me the most. He wasn't angry or crazy looking. He looked like he had all the time in the world." Marcus felt something drop into place inside his chest. Cold and certain. He knew that calm. The man in the silver car got out at 9:47 p.m. Marcus saw him first and shifted his weight slightly forward. Not dramatically, just enough to put himself between the man and Layla, like a door closing. Tall, 6'1", maybe 6'2", dark jacket. Unhurried stride, across the wet asphalt, hands in his pockets. Short, neat beard. Light-colored eyes. Blue or gray. Difficult to tell in the rain. He crossed the lot the way someone crosses a room they own. He stopped about 15 feet away, looked at Layla, then Marcus. "Hey," he said pleasantly. "That's my daughter. We had an argument. She's been upset, and I just want to make sure she gets home safe." "She's not your daughter," Marcus said. Simple, flat, no anger in it. The man's smile didn't break. "I understand how this looks. She does this. I just want—" "What's her name?" A pause. Barely a second. "Layla." Behind Marcus, Layla's breath caught. "I've never met him in my life," she said. "I've never seen him." The man's smile thinned slightly. He looked at Marcus again with those calm, pale eyes, and something passed between them that didn't need words. A mutual taking of measure. Two people who had both, at different points in their lives, learned how to read a room. And then the man said something he had no reason to know. He said, "Marcus." Not a question, just the name. Quiet in the rain. Marcus's jaw tightened. He knew. Layla said, "He knows you?" Marcus didn't answer her, because the ground had just shifted under the entire situation, and he needed a few seconds to understand what he was actually standing inside of, and what this man's presence here, on this road, on this specific night, actually meant. The man took one step forward. Marcus moved just his feet, nothing dramatic, and that single shift said clearly, "No further." The man stopped. "Small world," he said softly. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. The temperature in his voice had dropped 20 degrees. "Nothing to do with you. Walk away. This isn't your business. You made it my business when you followed her here." The man tilted his head. "Did I follow her here?" A slight smile. "Or did I follow you?" The words landed like something heavy dropped into still water. Marcus processed it instantly. The silver car appearing when it did. The route, the timing, this location. And underneath all of it, the question that was far colder than anything else. How long had this man known where Marcus was? This was not a random predator and a random girl on a random night. This had been planned. Behind him, Layla was watching. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel it. The way the air between the two men had turned into something heavy and old and dangerous. The way two storms feel before they meet. "Marcus," she said quietly, "what's going on?" He didn't look back at her, but his eyes said what she needed to hear. "Stay behind me." She understood. He turned back to the man in the rain. "Tell me who sent you," he said. The man's name was Derek Hale. That was not the name Marcus knew him by. 4 years ago, Marcus had been part of a federal task force that spent 18 months building a case against a trafficking network operating across 6 states. Sophisticated, organized, patient, run by people who had spent careers on the right side of the law and knew exactly how investigations worked, which made them nearly impossible to catch. The case had almost reached the top. Almost. 3 weeks before the arrests were set to happen, something leaked. 4 agents were compromised. 2 suspects vanished. And the man at the center of the network, known only by a code name, never a face, disappeared so completely that Marcus had spent the following months wondering if he'd ever existed at all. The case collapsed. Marcus filed his retirement paperwork shortly after. He had told himself it was grief, burnout, the accumulation of too many years carrying too much weight, and it was all of those things. But underneath him was something else, the knowledge that the man who had burned everything was still somewhere out there, watching, waiting, knowing exactly what Marcus had built and exactly what Marcus still knew. Derek stood in the rain with his hands in his pockets and spoke without any particular emotion. "You were close 4 years ago, closer than any of the others." "Layla has nothing to do with this," Marcus said. "No," Derek agreed. "She's just a girl who happened to be on a road I was already on. I needed a reason to stop in a public place without it looking like I was walking up to you." He said it the way someone describes a minor, logistical detail. No weight to it. No guilt. I did follow her. She wasn't wrong. "Why approach me at all?" Derek looked at him steadily. "Because my employer has decided that you know too much, and that 4 years is long enough to wait." A pause. Rain on asphalt. The distant flicker of the station sign. But before the alternative, Derek continued, "There's an offer." And that was when Marcus understood that tonight was never going to end quietly. Marcus had seconds to make decisions. He made them without ceremony. Layla needed to be inside. Now. He turned to her, leaned close, kept his voice low and specific. "Go inside. Tell the man at the counter to call the police. Lock yourself in the back. Don't come out and don't wash through the glass. Go." One breath of hesitation. "Go," he said again, quieter this time. She went. He turned back to Derek and let his eyes do a fast sweep of the lot. Not obviously, just the way a man glances around when he's thinking. The tree line, the far corner, the road entrance. The second car was already there. A dark SUV, Engine idling, positioned near the lot exit. He'd clocked it 90 seconds ago. Derek hadn't come alone. Men like Derek never did. Marcus kept his posture relaxed, his hands visible, his breathing even. "You said there's an offer," he said. "Then make it." Derek reached slowly into his jacket, showing his hand first, deliberately, and produced a small sealed envelope. He held it out. When Marcus didn't move toward it, Derek placed it on the wet ground between them. "Proof," Derek said, "the name you never found. The reason the Harmon case fell apart. My employer is willing to give you the truth in exchange for your silence. Walk away. Stay retired. Live quietly." "And if I don't?" Derek's eyes answered before his mouth could. Marcus heard sirens then, distant but real and getting less distant. Not from any system you'd claimed. Layla had gotten through. The sound changed Derek's calculation visibly, a hairline shift behind those calm eyes. "Think carefully," Derek said, and stepped back toward the silver car. "You handed me a name," Marcus said. "Whatever your employer sent you here to do tonight, you didn't help them." Derek stopped walking. For the first time, something moved behind those pale eyes that wasn't control. Then he turned and crossed the wet asphalt and was gone. But Marcus had already memorized everything he needed. The police arrived in 11 minutes. 3 cars. Marcus stood with his hands visible and identified himself calmly. Layla gave her statement first, then him. The silver car and the SUV were both gone. Derek moved the way men move when they've spent years not being caught. But Marcus submitted everything. Physical descriptions, the route of pursuit, a full record of the threat, and the envelope, sealed inside an evidence bag he requested on the spot. He did not yet mention the name on the paper inside it. That required a different call. To a different kind of person. One he hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Layla sat in the back of a police cruiser with a blanket around her and a coffee someone had found inside the station. She would be okay. He could see it in the way she was already sitting straighter, the panic draining out and something steadier taking its place underneath. She caught him looking and walked over. "Is he going to come back?" she asked. "For me?" "No," Marcus said. "You were never the target. The police report makes you untouchable now." She nodded, looked at him for a moment. "What was all that? Between you two?" "Old business," he said. "Nothing that touches you." She seemed to know there was a wall there. She didn't push against it. "Thank you," she said. Same words as before, much heavier now. He nodded once. That was enough. 3 hours later, the rain had stopped. Marcus sat alone on a dark stretch of Route 9 with his engine off, and the wet road stretching out ahead of him, gleaming faintly under a sky that was just beginning to consider clearing. He opened the envelope, one folded page, 8 lines of text, a name at the bottom, a sitting federal judge, a man Marcus had briefed personally 4 years ago, a man who had been inside the task force's inner circle, who had signed the operational warrant that should have ended everything, who had instead sold every detail of it for 11 years without a single person looking in his direction. Marcus read it twice. He sat with it for a while. 4 years of a question he couldn't answer. 4 years of retracing decisions and carrying the weight of a case that had died in his hands. And here it was, on a damp piece of paper in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere, delivered by the very man who was supposed to make sure Marcus never found it. Derek had made a mistake, and he wouldn't know it until it was too late. Marcus took out his phone, dialed a number he had not dialed since the week he filed his retirement paperwork. It rang twice. The man on the other end picked up. Marcus said 7 words. "I know who burned the Harmon case." Silence on the line, long and full. Then, "Where are you?" The judge's name entered the federal system before sunrise. It didn't happen loudly. Men like that never fall loudly. They fall quietly, in closed rooms, with lawyers and paperwork and the careful language of people who understand how these things are handled. But they fall. And the network that had spent 4 years rebuilding quietly in the spaces the original case had failed to reach, that began to unravel too, thread by thread, the way things do, and the name at the center finally has a face. Marcus wasn't involved in any of it directly. He'd given what he had and stepped back. That was enough. That was the right amount. Layla, he heard through a mutual contact 2 weeks later, had gone back to her life. She was okay. She'd started leaving her phone charged. That was enough too. Marcus rode out the next morning before the sun was fully up. No destination. Just the road and the cool air and the way the highway opens up when the world is still quiet and the light is still deciding what color to be. He thought about his brother, who had always said, "You carry too much. You think everything is yours to fix." Maybe. But Marcus had learned something a long time ago in a life that had taken him into dark places and asked him to stay clear-eyed in all of them. Some things follow you, not because you invited them, but because they were always going to arrive. Because the work doesn't end just because you stopped showing up to it. Because a girl running toward a stranger in the rain is sometimes the universe's way of telling you that retirement was never really the point. The point was what you did when the moment came. He hadn't gone looking for any of it, but he hadn't looked away either. The road stretched out ahead of him, wide and clean after the rain. Marcus Cole rode toward the light and didn't look back.